It's time for Recipe of the Day. When I have a night on my own and want to make myself something special that I love, that's maybe a little bit expensive or something that I want to make for a big group of people, I make myself beef short ribs. Now, I do them in the Instant Pot so that they're fall off the bone tender and then finish them off in the air fryer for a crust. So that's what I'm telling you about today. But I will also put a link in the show notes to how to make them in the more classic way where you sear them on the stove first and then braise them in the oven for a couple of hours. That totally works too. I just really like the Instant Pot way, and it ends up being that reverse sear technique, really, that I end up talking about all the time, right? So you're cooking them in the Instant Pot first. They're going to be like fall off the bone, tender and juicy. Then you add some oil to them and you put them in the air fryer and they get a nice crust on them. So great. Now, if you want to get the link to the recipe that I am talking about, you can look in the show notes or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and you will get the link there. So first I want to make sure that we are talking about the same kind of short ribs. We're doing beef short ribs, and you can actually buy beef short ribs in two different styles, English style and flanken style. Now the flanken style, if you've had Korean barbecue, that is what you're getting there. And it's these thin strips of meat that are studded with bits of bone. And that is because they've actually cut across the bone. They're cutting these thin strips and they're going right across the bone. Now it is the exact same meat as the English style ribs, but because it is cut so thinly, it doesn't need the slow cooking that the other cut of ribs requires, and that's why they can grill them. It's nice and thin, and so it's going to be tender enough to chew through because it's just those thin bits of meat. Whereas if you have a big chunk of the same meat, not tender meat, it is then harder to chew through all of that, and so it has to be cooked in a slower way to break that down a little bit. So the English style ribs are actually cut like parallel to the bone. So each rib has a full 2 to 3 inch bone on it and then has a big chunk of meat on that bone, right? So unlike the flankens that are this thin meat studded with bones, you just have one bone piece here, 2 to 3 inches long with a big chunk of meat on it. That is what you're looking for this recipe. So what I love about this method for doing short ribs is that it's really hands off. You pretty much are just tossing them in the Instant Pot and walking away. And then later you're tossing them in the air fryer or under the broiler, and then they're done. Really, really straightforward and simple. Because we're going to be doing that reverse sear, we're going to be browning it at the end. We don't need to do any of that like pre-browning in the Instant Pot or in a skillet or anything like that first. You're just throwing them in there. So what you're going to do is season the short ribs all over with salt, pepper, and garlic powder. We're doing 3 pounds of beef short ribs with the bone on them. It's about 8 pieces, okay? So 3 pounds, including the bone, you have about 8 short ribs. So you season them all up, and then you put 2 cups of beef stock or beef broth into the Instant Pot, and then you put a trivet or a heat-proof steamer basket. Most Instant Pots come with that in there, and that's just going to keep your meat above the liquid so that they're not like stewing in it. They're more being steamed above it. Then you put your short ribs on top of that trivet, trying to get them in a single layer. You might have to like stand them up. If you can get them in a single layer, that's going to be best. If they need to kind of have 1 or 2 on top of each other, that's going to be okay too. Then you're going to secure the lid on the Instant Pot, turn that valve to sealing. I always forget you have to turn that valve to sealing, and then you're going to cook it on high pressure for 30 minutes. So if you're familiar with how the Instant Pot works, what that means, the 30 minutes, is that the Instant Pot is all sealed up and it's going to heat and come up to pressure, and once it's at full pressure, then the 30 minutes time starts. So it's 30 minutes of pressure cooking, not 30 minutes total time. After the 30 minutes, you want to leave the valve in the sealing position, just leave it alone for 15 minutes. That's called doing a natural release. The pressure is going to just slowly start releasing. And that is because whenever you do meat in the Instant Pot, you want to do a natural release for a little while, because otherwise the sudden change in temperature from that hot pressure to flicking that valve to venting and all of a sudden that steam is gone, that actually will make the meat toughen up. So you want to do the natural release for at least 15 minutes, then turn the valve to venting, release any of the remaining pressure. Watch out, stand back. You don't want to burn yourself on that steam. And then once that little button has dropped down, letting you know that it is safe to open the lid, then you can open it up and use some tongs to get those ribs out of the Instant Pot onto a plate. Now, you could eat them right now. They're totally fine, but they're going to be even better if you brown them really well. What you're going to do is rub them all over with a little bit of oil. I use olive oil here, like in a mister. That's great. Or you could even use cooking spray. You just need a little bit of oil to help with the browning. And I like to add a little bit more salt at this point too. All the other salt that we put in kind of gets washed off into the liquid and got into the meat a bit. And now we're going to put some salt on the outside for like a little salty coating where that crunchiness is, right? Then you're going to put them into the air fryer at 400 degrees Fahrenheit until they're nice and brown. That's about 7 to 10 minutes. Open it up halfway through, see how they're doing. You might want to flip them around. That works. Or you can do them under the broiler. So you're going to get your rack in your oven 6 to 8 inches from those top broiling heat source elements. And then you're going to put a broiler safe pan under there with the ribs on them, oiled and salted the same way. And you're going to cook them until they're brown on top, 3 to 5 minutes, then flip them over and brown them on the other side. Now, I actually like them just like that. I don't put anything else on them. I just dig in. But a lot of people do like a little balsamic glaze on there. So you can buy a balsamic glaze at the grocery store. It's sold like where the vinegars are. I'll put a link to one from Amazon too so you can see what I'm talking about. It's a thickened balsamic vinegar and it's sweet and syrupy, but still tangy because it has that vinegar. Brush those all over the ribs at the end and they are perfect. Short ribs are wonderful on mashed potatoes or polenta, whether you are making them as that decadent treat for just you or for a group. Make sure there's something soft under there. Oh, bread would be great too. Just like a really great piece of crusty bread on the side. All of those are amazing. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is August 24th of 2025. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookville.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, recipe of the day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.